Jammu and Kashmir is one important issue that shaped India's foreign policy. And Jammu and Kashmir issue is itself shaped by the way we looked at or India looked at partition. Okay. We said reality is not out there, not out there. Reality is a construct, Not that there are no objective physical events, but the construction is about the cause of those events, the way we look at the event. Okay. So let us look at how India created a story around partition. Okay. India's narrative is that secular versus religious or Muslim. Whereas Pakistan's narrative is that Hindu versus Muslim. Indian textbooks accuse Jinnah of bringing two-nation theory, Hindus and Muslims. Okay. Britishers have contributed to this two-nation theory. Jinnah contributed to this two-nation theory, whereas we have been living as one, and where we can live as one, and we can be secular. So Indian story is secular versus religious, whereas other story is Hindu versus Muslim. Okay. So India is secular, wants to be secular, believes in secularism, and religion doesn't play a role, whereas others believed that they wanted an Islamic state. Of course, Jinnah did not say he wanted Islamic Pakistan. He wanted to create a secular Pakistan. That is a different issue. And Jinnah feared Hindu majoritarianism and not secularism. Okay. So Jinnah looked at as Hindu majoritarianism as a problem and not secularism as a problem. But India did not pay attention to that argument. He took Jinnah as a Muslim separatist, whereas India is in secular. So the point is secular versus religious. This is one way of looking at it, Hindu versus Muslim. Okay. Why is this important now in the context of Jammu and Kashmir? And it is because how do you look at Jammu and Kashmir issue? Should you look at it as a secular versus religious or Hindu versus Muslim? How do you look at Jammu and Kashmir issue? But in India, if one looks at as Hindu versus Muslim issue, he will say it is a communal way of looking at it. So religion as playing a role in politics itself is communal. So Indian textbooks say that this is a secularism versus religion, and Jammu and Kashmir is a test case of India's secularism. And making it as a Hindu and Muslim issue is Pakistan's agenda and communalist agenda and things like that. Okay. But here we are asking, which is closer to truth? Secular versus religious or Hindu-Muslim? This or this? Okay. If you take it as Hindu-Muslim issue, then the composition of Jammu and Kashmir will clearly reveal what people may want, what people prefer. But if you take it as secular versus religious issue, then you will have to ask people what do they want. So the issue of opinions, plebiscite, who wants what, it can be contested if you are taking in terms of secular versus religious. But if you are taking Hindu versus Muslim, just demography brings us the clarity on the issue. Okay. So let us look at the empirical data. Let us look at the empirical data. And what is a better way to look at that empirical data? Okay. Number one, partition-related violence. Partition-related violence. Did this violence take place on secularism versus religion or Hindu-Muslim? Obviously Hindu-Muslim. And how many people are killed in this related violence? Official estimates are 2 lakhs. Mountbatten said 2 lakhs. But unofficially, some people put it as 2 million. 2 million around that are killed. And killed on what basis? It is not on the basis of secularism. It is on the basis of Hindu Muslims. Did Muslims staying in that side of India, that was in Pakistan, plan to come to India because they wanted secularism? No. It was Hindus there Hindus and Sikhs of West Punjab trying to come to the east, killed. Muslims of East Punjab trying to go to the west, killed. So it is Hindu-Muslim violence. Okay. Why even partitioning of provinces, Punjab partitioning, Bengal partitioning, are people asked their opinion regarding whether they want to be a part of secular India or Islamic Pakistan or anything like that? The partition did by Radcliffe was along Hindu-Muslim lines. Muslims to Pakistan and Hindus to India. It was Hindu-Muslim dimension. Partition was not based on ideology. Okay. And in the case of princely rulers, for example, Junagadh, ruler was Muslim and he chose to be part of Pakistan, though people are Hindus. So again, Hindu-Muslim dimension, and India did not agree. So India used military force first, and later plebiscite was held. In plebiscite, people overwhelmingly favored India. Why? Not because of secularism, but because they're Hindus. Why did the ruler want to be a part of Pakistan? Because he was Muslim. Later, much later in Hyderabad, Nizam was not willing to join India. Why? Because he was a Muslim. But why did people want to be part of India? Because mostly they're Hindus. So the issue is not on the ideology of secularism. The issue is Hindu-Muslim issue. Okay. These things we talked about outside Jammu and Kashmir. But what was there inside Jammu and Kashmir? A lot of violence took place. In 1947, along communal lines in Jammu and Kashmir, so much that demography changed. Demography changed. Jammu composition became more Hindu because Muslims left. So Jammu and Kashmir was not immune to what was going on. After all, Jammu and Kashmir, close to Jammu and Kashmir, nearer to Jammu and Kashmir was Punjab, where lakhs were being killed. But of course, Kashmir Valley is a little bit isolated, but not completely isolated. People knew what was going on, and or they would know with some time gap. So let us look at the violence within Jammu and Kashmir around that time in 1947. So this is a book came out recently, written by Christopher Snedden, titled Understanding Kashmir and Kashmiris. And he gives the level of violence in Jammu and Kashmir in 1947. After considerable research, it's a very scholarly work. So this is what he says on violence in Jammu and Kashmir. Between September to November 1947, perhaps 20,000 to 1 lakh Muslims were killed in Jammu province. 20,000 to 1 lakh. See, look at the variation in estimates. There was just no accounting. No accurate details. And he says, although considerable research is needed to confirm this. And these figures did not include rapes, abductions, and serious injuries. Around 4 lakh Jammu Muslims fled to Azad Kashmir, which had 1,50,000 refugees. Few of the refugees ever returned home. Okay. This Azad Kashmir was formed around the time where I mean, few days before Maharaja would sign on instrument of accession. So many refugees before, and then many went. And what was going on that side where Muslims were in majority? 20,000 Hindus and Sikhs were killed in Rajouri and Mirpur by Muslims during the same period. These cities are in the present day Pakistan. So a lot of violence was going on in Jammu. This nothing to say about Kashmir Valley. Okay. So violence was going on in Jammu and violence was going on in Punjab. And do you expect that people of Kashmir Valley won't think in terms of Hindus and Muslims? And they would think in terms of secularism and versus religion. Okay. Uh, so um, this violence changed, and then the violence here and then later things changed demography. Otherwise, at one time, this was the demography. In Jammu, 61% are Muslims. Kashmir, 93%. Frontier districts, mostly Muslims. So Muslims constituted majority in all. It is only difference of what percentage of Hindus are there in a province. In Jammu, there is a significant number. But otherwise, Jammu and Kashmir consisted of 77% of Muslims, 20%. This was before the religious disturbance, communal disturbance. Okay. So for clarity, you can look at this map. Kashmir is here. Jammu is here. Okay. So it was out of this Azad Kashmir here is created. And these were called frontier districts. Northern areas, Ladakh. Okay. So frontier district constituted a huge area, but population wise it was much less. Frontier districts 1,64,000 square kilometers. Population is only 0.3 million. Okay. So Jammu population was high, Kashmir population was high. So frontier district is very little. But in the map, frontier districts constituted a huge area. So essentially, this is Jammu and Kashmir. Most of the concentration of the population is here. And overall, it is Muslim. But Hindus are in not in majority, but in a significant numbers in Jammu. So this was the demography. This was claimed on the basis of secularism versus religion. So how likely that the people would think like that instead of Hindu and Muslim, given this enormous amount of violence around? Okay. So is our image of ourselves right? Okay. When it talks about what is your identity? So is our identity right? Isn't our identity like Hindus who want to create a secular state, or Hindus where or there is a political leadership that wants to create a secular state, but essentially it is Hindus rather than essentially it is secular. So what is India? Why was India partitioned, and on what basis it was partitioned? And if the basis is Hindu-Muslim polarization, what should Jammu and Kashmir place be, and what would people choose? Okay. And when there is a significant population of Hindus in an area, significant, though not majority, maybe partitioning with some planning might be needed, whatever. So it is a Muslim majority state where a significant number of Hindus are there at a particular place. Okay. Majority was Muslim in all the 3 provinces, and totally. But there is a significant Hindu population in a particular province, and very heavy polarization and violence around. Okay. So this is how we should look at Jammu and Kashmir issue. Looking at Jammu and Kashmir issue in terms of Hindu-Muslim is wrong, is communalism, is to deny reality. And before we conclude, let me say, reality is not out there, and it is a construct. Is it true? But this construct takes place taking certain major events in the real world, in the world. But if the construct ignores certain very important event like this, very important event, and then goes by small events, and ignores this. Okay. So if your construct is so much different from taking into account the actual events, what happens is that you don't have an accurate, there is nothing like accurate understanding. You don't have an understanding of reality which is closer to the real. We're not saying this is real, but in terms of what may be close. So your construct has to take into account extremely important events. So in secularism versus religion doesn't take into account enormous violence and polarization. Okay. So I would say it is a faulty construct. It is a faulty construct. India not accepting that it is Hindu India despite enormous violence leads to faulty construction of identity. And not only it leads to faulty construction of your identity, it also leads to faulty construction of others' identity, like Jammu and Kashmir. So when you don't get your identity right, when you don't understand others' identity right, you fail to address the problem, because there is a huge gap between the reality and your construction of it. So they are secular, and they can be secular, and they are not allowed to be secular because of some other state, and here it is Pakistan. Okay. Otherwise they would have been secular, otherwise they would have chosen India. So faulty constructions lead to creation of all kinds of complications, including blaming others. Okay. So that leads to inability to respond to the crisis. Okay. So let's continue the discussion tomorrow. Thank you.